It's been 7 years, 700 shows, 7 cats, 7 seas, 7 dwarfs, 7 brides for 7 brothers, magnificent 7, 7 days of creation, the neutral pH of 7, dial 7 to call Russia, we might as well call him 007.
Into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head.
Two long-running podcasts walk into a bar. One of the long-running podcasts goes straight up to the bar counter and says, "Hello, welcome to episode 700. And the man behind the bar says, "I beg your pardon, sir." And the long-running podcast says, "Welcome to episode 700 as we kick off our 8th year on the internet with show 700 after a brief summer interlude during which Ireland experienced an unexpected heat wave. Well, maybe it was expected, I don't know. I don't go watching the weather on the television every night like some sort of a freak, so it was unexpected to me. Turned up a couple of weeks ago, sun was splitting the rocks. The studio headquarters in Central Ireland was too hot to sit in. Never mind stand. Anyway, a pint of your finest Guinness, please." And the man behind the bar says, "Why didn't you just say that in the first place?" And the long-running podcast says, "'Cause you have to have a beginning and a middle and an end to these things. You can't just launch straight into the middle of it, because that's not a launch at all. That's like having lunch and calling it brunch and saying, let's just skip breakfast and move straight on to lunch, even though it's not lunchtime yet, and we'll call it brunch." No. You can't be doing that sort of crap, not after 700 episodes. You need to be more organised than that. You need to have a format going. And the man behind the bar says, "I still don't know what you're talking about, and you still seem to be choking to death on your first glug of energy drinking over 2 weeks. That's a bit worrying." And the long-running podcast says, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It just went down the wrong way. I'll cough it up as we go along. There might be some taurine in my lung for the rest of my life, but we'll survive. It's happened before. There's probably stuff down there from many years ago. I was reading yesterday about how if you eat a bit of chewing gum, it could be still digesting there several years later. We're probably all loaded up on bubble gum that we sucked down when we were 12 years of age, and I never figured out how to blow a bubble, although I did swallow some bubble gum, not realising on first go that you weren't supposed to. Didn't do me any harm as far as I know." And the man behind the bar says, "Pint of Guinness, is it?" And the long-running podcast says, "Indeed it is. Well, I suppose that remains to be confirmed. Haven't seen it yet, but I trust you. You're a trained barman. You've got the Guinness logo up behind you, so I assume you've been approved by the Arthur Guinness Company of Ireland Limited, or wherever it's from now. It's probably owned by some company from Pluto now. I believe it is, or I believe it was brought over. It was brought up by some international conglomerate. It's a long time since any member of the Guinness family was sitting there in the head office, in the Guinness equivalent of the Oval Office, doing whatever you do in the Oval Office. Anyway, yes, pint of your finest Guinness, please." And the man behind the bar says, Okay, calm down, take a chill pill." And the man says, the long-running podcast says, "I'm not allowed to take chill pills. You can't import those things into Ireland. That's why I'm resorting to alcohol instead. A pint of your finest Guinness to settle me down and relax me." That's probably not a good sign if I'm having to drink a pint of alcohol to relax me, although it's not really a pint of alcohol. I think you'll find there's about 4% of that is alcohol. 4% proof, as they call it. Never knew what that meant. I could probably look it up easily in an internet search and find out what's the difference between 4% proof and the other type of percentage that they put that isn't proof. I don't know. And the man behind the bar says, "I could probably explain that to you if I could remember all the stuff that I crammed the night before my bar exam, but I can't. And the long-running podcast says, "Oh, a bar exam. I always thought the bar exam was the thing that barristers did before they got called up to the bar, the legal bar council, wherever you call it. What you're saying is for barmen, is it?" And the man behind the bar says, "No, no, no. A bar exam is for barmen and women of all shapes and sizes. They don't discriminate on grounds of sex. They don't discriminate on grounds like that. And I'm sure if we wanted to, we could go for the bar as well, but that would be a whole separate part of our education. I suppose you could do your legal studies in the daytime and go to a bartending course at night, but no, those would be two completely separate things. And I realise now I've probably caused confusion by saying I did my bar exam. I should call it something else, but I think you'll find that bars have been around just as long as the legal system, and we're no less entitled to use that word than the other people are going to have to do that thing that the wrestlers did, where they changed it from World Wrestling Federation to World Wrestling Entertainment to avoid confusion with the people who saved the animals. Christ. And the long-running podcast says, "How are we going with that Guinness there?" And the man behind the bar says, "Oh, nearly done." Nearly done. And the long-running podcast says, "That's great. We're nearly time to get on with the show then. Suppose I should say hello and welcome to show 700. Isn't it absolutely fucking fantastic?" And the man behind the bar says, "It is indeed. Welcome back and many congratulations." I've always been a great believer in the dictum quod ete arachnophobia, which, as you're no doubt fully aware, means whatever will be will turn out to be whatever will turn out to be. Where does it go after that? It goes wherever your imagination takes you. Have a bit of imagination left in you. These aren't direct translations from the Latin anyway. These are all just vagaries on which to base your entire life. Your whole life is based on a question anyway. We don't know who we are or what we are or where we are, so you might as well base everything we do on vagaries, on uncertainties and lumps of Latin strung together like meaningless bits of crap strung together on a washing line, basically. Although, don't get too cynical about bits of crap stuck together on the washing line, because we wouldn't even have electronic communications had the fellow who invented the predecessor to the telephone not been playing around with a washing line and put a tin can at either end and spoke into one end and heard his cat meowing at the other end, and he thought, Christ, if only there were some way I could talk to someone through a cable. And then he said, oh wait a minute, I am talking to someone through a cable. It's just that it's a cat, so it's a bit of a one-sided conversation. Wouldn't be if I was Dr. Doolittle, although they say that about Dr. Doolittle. They say he could talk to the animals, but what they don't mention is that the animals couldn't understand the fucking word he was saying, and he couldn't understand the word they were saying. I can talk to my cat all day. Doesn't mean we're getting anything done. You see these people having their EU Commission talks. They get all the heads of state together and they'll sit in a big hall and talk for 3 days about the budget, and then you realise nobody has a clue what anyone's saying. They've all got earplugs jammed into their lungs. They're supposedly listening to a translator. Well, the translator is just saying, I don't know what this fella's saying. He's talking some foreign language that I don't understand. Just because you put the name translator on me, that doesn't mean anything, especially since we're from a non-English speaking country. Although translator is probably from the French. Those words like that usually are. They're usually an English word that's being derived from the French. Translation is probably the original of it. Hello, I am a translation from Francaise. I come all the way from France to your country. I bring my translation. What kind of translation equipment would you need? Well, you need some headphones for a start, so you could listen to the fellow who's talking. You need a microphone that you could quietly and discreetly talk your translation into for the other people to hear, and be sure not to say it so loud that it drowns out the person who's speaking. And therein lies the problem, because you have to say it so quietly that the people who need to hear the translation can't hear you, because you're afraid. Because if you talk over the person who you're translating, then you won't be able to hear them. How are you going to translate something that you can't hear because you're talking over it? No. That's why deaf people have their voice. They have their silent sign language, so there's no fear that they'll drown the person out who's actually talking out loud. They do their little surreptitious signalling. They say, here's what this fella's saying now. Look at my hands and I'll do a signal with it. He's saying this now. Here's what he's saying. He's saying this. You can just barely hear my sign language here because I'm doing it right in front of the microphone and I'm exaggerating the noise. In the real world, it's a lot quieter than this. I've worked for people who use sign language as a very quiet and modest way of communication, and I approve of it immensely. Blind people, of course, completely different. They have to shout their heads off to be heard because they can't do signals. They can't give you the two fingers, so they have to make up for it by being loud and obnoxious. Not that being loud automatically makes you obnoxious, but it's very hard for it not to seem that way. You can be obnoxious as be damned, and people will say, if you're doing it in sign language, you can be obnoxious as you like, and no one has a fucking clue what you're saying. But if you're doing it out loud, and you're saying, look at me, I'm communicating through the medium of noise, I say, that fella, he's obsessed with making noise, obsessed with, it's like he's compensating for something. That's what they like to say about it. Anyone who's good at anything or has something that's good, they'll say, he's compensating for something else about him that's bad. That fella's going around, that Mother Teresa one, she's compensating for the fact that she's as ugly as be damned. What's she doing now to compensate for the fact that she's dead? Very little, I think you'll find, although we'll see about that now. If she qualifies as a saint, that would imply that she's doing something while she's dead. She's doing enabling miracles to happen. I suppose she's an enabler, really. She's enabling these people with their blind beliefs in miracles. She's enabling them by making them come true. Now, I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, he doesn't sound like he's had any coffee today. Well, that's very astute of you. It's very astute of you, even though these fictional thoughts that you're having are actually coming out of my mind. But no, very astute nonetheless for the fictional you to do all that. No, I haven't had any coffee today. I wasn't planning on recording. I was just planning on getting ready for coming back to recording. I was going, not that that's anything involved. I think I realised then that there isn't any preparation involved, so I might as well just get stuck in. And before I know it, I've had one sip of energy drink, which doesn't count in the scheme of things. And a sip of energy drink is like it's like a drop in the world's oceans. When you look at the world's oceans in terms of the universe. Now, there may not be any other oceans in the universe, in which case a drop in the world's oceans is the same as a drop in the universe's oceans, which makes it more significant than you might think, but still nonetheless quite insignificant. Well, you'd be largely right about that, but technically I'm on my holidays at the moment. I just posted the comeback date. I said, I put on the social networks, into your head will be back on the 29th of July. It's only the 23rd now. I'm on my holidays, I can take it easy. This doesn't have to be any good. I suppose I'll need to eventually turn it into something good in time for July 29th. But leave that to me. Don't you be worrying about that. That's for me to worry. If you have to do all the production stuff here or worry about it, then you might as well be working in here on the podcast, making a bit of money for yourself. But no, this isn't a frigging power sharing, profit sharing organisation, so just go back to being a listener. You're not a frigging shareholder in this, no. That was water, in case you probably are, you're wondering. That's water. Why isn't he drinking energy drink? It's a bit late in the day for that, but I'll have another sip. It'll keep you happy. Let's call it compromise. Well, I'm happy now. Controlling what I put into my body during my podcast holiday. I'm not even supposed to be here. Just came in here to tidy up some loose ends. No. It's like when you drop into your office during your holidays to make a photocopy of your cat that you have drawn for your kid. To make it. You could do this back. I remember back in the 80s, my father brought me down to the bank where he worked after hours, where he went down to check that everything was okay. And he said, draw a picture of the cat and I'll photocopy it for you in a difference. I was amazed. I thought, Christ, he's made a copy of this cat in a different colour and a different size, and he's handed it to me. It's like a freaking miracle. It's like a freaking his mother. I probably hadn't heard of Mother Teresa by then. I'd heard of the Pope. I'd heard of then Pope John Paul II, because he had recently before that come to Ireland on a visit. He'd come round in his Pope mobile, and people had gathered in my house because he had a colour television. They gathered to watch him doing mass to a third of the population. They all turned up with their sandwiches and their Pope memorabilia. They said, the Pope's here, he's going to do a mass in the park in the middle of Dublin, up near the zoo. He went to a big city park that's just a couple of miles from the city centre, and it has a zoo in it. I don't think he went into the zoo, and I can't be sure of that. I could probably look up the details. There's probably great coverage on the internet of it. It doesn't really matter. Probably the man's dead now. He's buried 2 popes deep in the although they didn't bury the last one yet because he's not dead. The last pope, he retired, but he's not dead, so they haven't buried him yet. So the pope from 2 popes back has only buried 1 pope deep in history. I suppose the last fella's papacy is a matter of history now, but he's not history, he's still alive, so they haven't they don't bury them like that anyway, one under the other. I was talking metaphorically in history. Buried 2 popes deep in history, I was talking about. Seems like a lot less long ago than that. Although 2 popes ago isn't a measurement of time, because a papacy can be a day long, or it can be 1,000 years long, or however long they live. How long does a pope live? I don't know. The last one, I've only seen 1 pope die ever, and he was in his 80s. The last fella's still alive. He's living out his retirement in some house now, and the new fella, he's just barely getting started. He's doing confessions on Twitter now, apparently. I can do confessions on Twitter if you want. Do you want the papal absolution from me? It's not worth the paper it's printed on. It won't be printing it. It'll be an electronic thing. You can print it out if you want. I'll say, I hereby grant you a fake papal absolution for the following sin. Now, of course, I'll have to have a look at the sins, because I'll have to see if it matches my morality. I have more morality than the Pope. I'm not going to just forgive you for any old crap. If you come along to me and say, for example, I murdered a cat in front of Pope John Paul II in the Phoenix Park, there's more behind him than in front of me. That's why he got away with it. I was kind of behind the stage and had got out a cat and murdered it in full view of some drunken kids who were sitting there. And you're thinking, why would they let drunken kids sit in front of the Pope? Well, so that he could talk to them. There's no point in just preaching to the converted. He came along here, he made a famous speech. He said, young people of Ireland, I love you. And then they all put down their beer. They put down their cider bottle or 2-litre bottles of it wasn't Tesco then, it was Quinsworth yellow pack cider. They put those down and they said, this Pope fella, he seems to be preaching to us now, not just to the converted. Maybe he's trying to convert us. Do you think he's trying to convert us? And they said, this would probably be a lot more convincing if we were on mushrooms rather than Quinsworth supermarket own brand cider. And some other fella says, that's probably true. And a great night is had by all.
Matchstick cats. Matchstick cats. Matchstick cats. Matchstick cats and stuff.
Are you a cat? Or do you know somebody who might be? Then tell yourself about Matchstick Cats, Neal's webcomic. Brand new episodes at intoyourhead.com.
IntoYourHead.com.
The Into Your Head podcast will be right back after this. We're back with the Into Your Head podcast.
2 cats walk into a bar. one of the cats goes straight up to the bar counter and says, "Hello, can I have a pint of your finest Guinness, please?" And the man behind the bar says, "Oh, that's original. And the cat says, "What the fuck? Am I supposed to? Are we supposed to have a bespoke order every time? I'm sure I can do that if you like. If you think you can keep up with my bespoke orders, I'll be happy to do that. I'll have a Guinness, Coca-Cola, rare prawn from the Far East, from a lake in the Far East somewhere, mixed with the brains of the Loch Ness Monster cocktail, please, and make it snappy." And the man behind the bar says, "Certainly, sir," and immediately starts to pull the Guinness. And the cat says, "Maybe a cat." In fact, there's a good possibility. In fact, I'm quite clear that I am a cat, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean you can pull the wool over my eyes. In fact, if I was a sheep, that would probably be more easy to do. Can you pull the sheep over? There's a question for you. Can you pull the wool over a sheep's eyes? Is there enough of it around its eyes for you to? Well, you could probably drag strands of it down like you would with an eyebrow. If you tugged on your eyebrow, you could probably drag it down over your eye, but would that make it a permanent? Well, I suppose you don't pull the wool permanently over someone's eyes normally. You wouldn't want that. If you did, you'd have to sew it down, and then after a while, I can tell you, people will start becoming suspicious. They'd go up to that person and they say, "There seems to be wool sewed over your eyes. I think someone's out to get you, not to make you paranoid or anything, but it looks to me like someone's been doing something to you." And you'll say, "I'm beginning to think so myself. I can't seem to see because there's wool dragged over my eyes. Now I realise I've caused this effect a few times by tugging on my eyelashes for fun, but usually it springs back almost immediately. No, this seems to be permanently pulled over my eyes, and it's wool, which is a bit odd because I'm pretty sure there's no wool growing on me. So it's artificial wool extension, not even extensions, because it's not like a hair extension where you're extending your hair. There's no wool there in the first place, so it's an artificial wool implant. It isn't even going to take root. Although, do hair implants take? There's a question for you. They probably do take root. Hair extensions don't, because you're just extending a bit of hair. You're basically gluing it onto the end and pretending that it's hair. With a hair implant, I think it's a different thing. They jam it right into your scalp and hope that it'll grow, a bit like when you transplant weeds. When you're weeding your garden and you don't like to kill weeds, but you like to get them out of places where they're not wanted, which is what makes them. A weed is just a thing that's growing where it's not wanted. So if you transplant the weed to somewhere where you're happy for it to grow, then it immediately stops being a weed. It starts being whatever the Latin name for that particular plant is that you're calling a weed. And you put it somewhere else, you say, "Oh, it's not a weed anymore. It's a transplanto arachnofamping," something. I used to watch Gardener's World with my father years ago. They gave out the Latin names of all these plants. Oh, it was a BBC Two programme. So upmarket, they said, "I'm going to grow some of these. Now this is called the bluebell, and its Latin name is Blueblanca punkitintica." They put the Latin name up on the screen in italics, and all the old-fashioned people from back before Vatican II would take the Latin names, and all the modern gardeners would take the. No, that's not right. Vatican II was a thing where they did a review of the Mass. And they said, "Oh, we're going to try a new novelty thing where we start doing stuff in English so people can understand it." And there was outrage. It was considered very controversial. There was a pope in the 60s or 70s. He says, "We're going to try not doing everything in Latin and having songs that people can understand. We're going to try doing stuff in a way that the people who are attending the Mass can understand what the fucking hell it's about." I realise this is going to be controversial, but if you think that's bad, you wait and see what's going to come out about what we're doing secretly at the moment. Well, you'll find out about that in a few decades. No, I'll tell you, you'll be longing for the days when your biggest problem was which ancient language you had to listen to us talking in. And of course he'd be saying all this in Hebrew or something, so no one had a fucking clue what he was talking about. That's ironically, the only way that Pope was able to push through his reformations and get the Mass translated into English was by voicing his proposals in another language that no one could understand, not even the proponents of Latin. That's how he got it through. Now, of course, that's made up. it might as well be. Everything's made up in this world. Everything in this world is a fiction, a figment of our imaginations. Everything you look at, you're looking up at a blue sky now. That blue's not there at all. Your mind made that. Your optical nerve sent the thing along to your brain and said, this is blue. Put in whatever you've got for blue there in your virtual paint bank. And the brain doesn't see colours. It just sees it just looks at its paint tank and sees, this little bucket here has a B on it. I know what a B is because I've got a language part of my brain. B for blue, so I'll assume that's what blue looks like. And it takes out a bit of a blob of the stuff that's labelled B for blue, and it paints that onto the image in your mind, and your mind thinks, that's what it is. It's blue. It's blue as be damned. As blue as the day I was born, before I started breathing anyway. As blue as the stuff that they put into food to make it look unnatural. As blue as the plasters that you put on you when you cut your finger when you're working in a delicatessen. You put on a blue plaster in case it drops into people's food, and people will say, I can see that's not meant to be there because it's blue. Blue doesn't occur naturally in the food world. Well, of course, that's becoming a problem now because they're bringing out blue foods. They're bringing out blue Mr. Freezes, blue vodka drink mixes. They're bringing out, what else is there that's blue? I'm sure there's other things. There's that biscuit thing, that black biscuit thing probably has a blue version as well. You know, that American biscuit sandwichy thing. What's it called? I forget the name of it. That's probably got a blue version. I'm sure there's all sorts of blue things now. I can't name any yet though. Well, I just did. I named blue Mr. Freeze. There's probably a blue M&M as well, is there? Wouldn't surprise me for one moment if there was a blue M&M. They probably set up a special marketing campaign around it. They said, we're putting some blue M&Ms in, and then there was outrage because they reduced the number of red ones by 80% to temporarily make room for the blue ones, and people said, this is a fucking disgrace. A fucking disgrace. It's a rip-off. I expect a certain percentage of each colour of M&M, and they're changing it. This is a gimmick. It's just a gimmick. It's just a gimmick. How can't we go back to the old days when they had rhyme and reason behind their colours? But no, they're just throwing in random colours just for marketing gimmicks instead of having natural M&M. In the natural world of M&M type confectionery, you'd expect a random assortment of colours. If M&Ms were growing in the wild, that's what you'd expect. But no, they want to control everything and measure everything and use everything as a fucking gimmick, and it's absolutely gone too far. They're trying to pull the wool over all our eyes, and we're allowing it only because we don't know what's happening. We're not consciously allowing it. We're not even subconsciously allowing it. We're just accidentally facilitating it, which isn't the same as allowing it now that I think about it. But how can I think about something if I'm not even aware it's happening? And that's it. That's how they know. That's our downfall, and that's how they get you. I can tell you that they're not allowed to do subliminal advertising anymore because it's illegal, but they do that instead. And tell you, a couple of years from now we'll all be dead, and then I can tell you we'll be sorry. We'll be sorry we didn't listen to the fella who wrote Fast Food Nation and the fella who did that thing. Oh, you know, your man who did that movie, Super Size Me, where he crammed chips and burgers and soft drinks down his neck for a couple of months to see if he'd die. And he didn't die, but we all knew he wouldn't die. But he came pretty close to being down unwell. We even saw him puking. And then we realised, this stuff makes you puke. That can't be good. Food that makes you puke can't be good for you. But of course, then they say, that's just the bulimics that puke. Everyone else is fine. When was the last time you puked in a fast food outlet? Well, if I remember rightly, I think it was around 15 years ago. I don't think I puked in the actual outlet. I think it was about 10 minutes after I left. That was probably to do with all the beer I'd been drinking before. But if you're going to put a fast food outlet beside a pub and have it open late at night, that's to be expected. Well, I didn't put it there though, so I didn't expect it. I'm not a member member of the fast food industry. I'm just a customer. They're the experts, not me. If I go along to a business, I expect the people doing the business to be the experts, and they need to advise me on elements of their industry in which I would not be an expert. They need to tell me, you've had 10 pints of Guinness and you're going to eat this crap now. You might puke, just so you know. You probably know that already. You're blind drunk, so you're prepared to take the risk. If there's any risk involved in puking, as long as you don't choke on it. No, it's fine to puke. Puking is not a bad thing. It's letting the whole out. It says, if someone came up to you and said you have to juice for a month and crop out everything, you'd say, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, but it sounds like you'd feel great after it, and it sounds like it'll be very good for your system. But no, if the same people came up and said you have to eat crap for a month so you puke your guts out and clean out your system, same way you clean out your colon by crapping, you clean out your stomach by puking everything up for a month, I can tell you, you'd have questions about that. I can tell you wouldn't race headlong into it, and that's because you're not an expert and they are. Sometimes you have to listen to the experts, not just because you don't know how something works doesn't mean you should question it. Just let the experts do their thing and you just listen to them and have a bit of humility for half a minute. Anyway, show 700, thank you very much, good morning.
Into your head.